Hello and welcome to the new lesson on Azure Technical Skills. In this lesson, we will talk about what is virtual network peering in Azure, what are its types, and what are the advantages of using virtual network peering. So in Azure, in case of multiple virtual networks, the communication over private address spaces is disabled. Let's say we have two VNets, each having its own private CIDR space. The resources in each VNet will not be able to use the private CIDR space of the other VNet for communication. This means that our resources must have a public internet-facing endpoint which we can use to establish communication between the resources in different VNets, okay, using global internet, even if the public endpoint is really not needed besides this. Moreover, imagine a scenario where you want to securely transfer data between apps deployed in different VNets in Azure. So exposing our sensitive information to the whole public internet is not very secure. So this is where Vnet Peering comes into rescue. Vnet Peering makes two virtual networks appear as one, so they can securely communicate with each other using each other's private CIDR space. We can establish Vnet Peering even if the virtual networks are in separate regions, okay? So in this case, that would be called regional Vnet Peering. So now it's time to see how we can configure Vnet Peering between two virtual networks. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is to create two virtual networks. So I'll go on virtual networks and then click on this add button, and then the subscription is Azure subscription 1. Resource group, let it be Vnet Peering, and then the name of the VNet, let's say I call it VN1, and then the region could be anything, okay. I'll go to the IP address section, and then the CIDR block for this virtual network will be, let's say, 192.168.10.0 and then /24, okay. Now you must note that when you create a virtual network, you must have at least one subnet, okay. But since we are not interested in adding any subnet into this virtual network, we can just go ahead and add all this CIDR block as a subnet, okay. So I'll click on add subnet, and then the name of the subnet, let's say SN1, and then the whole CIDR block of this virtual network is, let's say, our subnet, okay. So next, the security settings. We do not any settings from this panel, okay. Tags, I will leave it for now. Review and create, and then I will click the create button, okay. So let's go ahead and quickly create another virtual network. So I'll go to my home screen, go on virtual network once again, and click on add button once again. Select the resource group, name of this virtual network, let's say VN2, and then location again could be anything. And next, the CIDR block of this subnet to this virtual network 2 would be, let's say, 192.168.20.0/24. Now the reason why I have given it a separate CIDR block is that we cannot have two virtual networks with the same CIDR space, okay. If I go ahead and try to do that, it will give me an error, okay. So just keep it in mind. And once again, I will add this whole CIDR block to the subnet, because having at least one subnet in a virtual network is mandatory by Azure, okay. And then the name of the subnet would be, let's say, SN2. I'll click on add button, and security settings, I will leave them, tag no need, and then review and create, and then click create, okay. So I will pause the video for now and get back to you once both the virtual networks have been created. Okay, so I've created two virtual networks in my Azure subscription, and behind the scenes I've also created two of the virtual machines, virtual machine 1 in virtual network 1 and virtual machine 2 in virtual network 2, okay. As you can see here, virtual network VN1 and then subnet 1. Similarly for virtual machine 2, it's VN2 and SN2, okay. Now what we really want to focus upon is the actual communication between these two virtual machines, considering that these both are in different virtual networks, okay. So let's see how Azure will handle them. Now if I go to my virtual machine 1 and then try to ping the public IP address of virtual machine 2, I'll copy it from here and then I'll paste it here, and if I press enter, I can see that the communication is going on. Now the reason why this communication is happening is because I'm not actually establishing this communication over a local area network, over the private IP. I'm actually doing ping to the public IP address. Okay, so the public IP address is accessible globally. Okay, so whether the virtual machines are in a separate virtual network or within the same virtual network, it doesn't matter. Okay, these will be get pinged. Okay, from any side. Now what we really want is to establish the communication using the private channel. Okay, using these private IPs. Okay, so if I go to my virtual machine 1 once again and then try to ping the private IP address of virtual machine 2, I'll copy the private IP address of virtual machine 2. It's 20.4 192.168.20.4. okay, I think I won't be able to copy that, but I will just type in 168.20.4. Now if I ping it, I'm unable to get any response back. Okay, because these are two separate virtual networks and the private IPs of either of the subnets are not accessible from either of the virtual networks. Okay, so this is what we're going to be actually establishing in this lab, okay, which is called Vnet Peering. So once we establish that, we will be able to ping the private IP addresses of each of the virtual machines as well. So in order to add virtual network peering, I will go to my virtual networks and then let's say I select VN1. Okay, I can do the same thing with the VN2 as well, but let's say I select virtual network 1 and then in this tab I will search for peering. Okay, so I'll use the search box once again and type in peerings and then I have this option. So as for now I have no virtual network peering here, so I will click this add button and then I'm presented with this blade. Okay, so this is actually the peering name, so let's call it peering between VN1 and VN2. Okay, it's better to have the name to be self-explanatory. Okay, so when I read this I know that it's actually the peering between virtual network 1 and virtual network 2. Okay, now the first option is to allow the remote traffic to remote virtual network. The remote virtual network in this case is virtual network 2. Okay, so I want to allow the traffic. Yes. Now this second option which says traffic forwarded from remote virtual network. Okay, so it basically means that if any traffic is originated outside the virtual network 2 and it comes to virtual network 2, will it be forwarded to our network, to our virtual network 1 or not? So I say yes. Okay, allow it. And then virtual network gateway, we have not talked about it yet, so I'll leave this option for now. And in here I actually provide the peering link name. Okay, so let's say I call it the same, VN1 to VN2. Okay, now I will use this resource manager. Okay, the classical option will soon be deprecated, so I will not use this option. Now I do not know my resource ID. By resource ID we mean the ID of virtual network. Okay, so I do not know it for now, so I'll let the Azure handle it. And then the subscription is subscription 1. Okay, and then this is the target virtual network. Okay, this is the target virtual network, which is in this case is virtual network 2. Okay, and then I have the same options for virtual network 2 as I had for virtual network 1. Okay, so I'll leave these settings as they are and then click the add button. Okay, so as you can see, it is actually making two links. Okay, one link is for virtual network 1 and one link is for virtual network 2. So which means basically the link is only one, but we'll be able to see the same link on both of the virtual networks. Okay, even though we configured the link only on virtual network 1, but since the peer was made with virtual network 2, so we'll be able to see this peer in both of the virtual networks. Okay, so if I go to virtual networks 2 and in this peering section, if I refresh it, I can see the same peer in here again. Okay, so this is exactly what we wanted. Okay, so now that the virtual network peering has been configured, it's time to see the final result, which is the access of each of the virtual machines from each other using the private IP addresses. Okay, so if I go back to my virtual machine 1, so note down the private IP address of virtual machine 1 is 10.4 and for virtual machine 2 it's actually 20.4. Okay, so I will go to my virtual machine 1 and then try to ping the private IP address of virtual machine 2. Okay, it's 20.4. so if I press enter, you see this time I'm getting the reply back. Okay, I can check the same from virtual machine 2. and the 10.4 is the virtual machine private IP address of virtual machine 1. Okay, so the same result here, I am getting the response back. So this is what we actually wanted. This means that a private channel between virtual network 1 and virtual network 2 has been configured. Okay, now this is not only applicable for virtual machines. It could be anything. It could be a database service, it could be a storage account, okay, it could be an app service, whatever. The private connection between virtual network 1 and 2 has been created. Okay, so all of the resources, whether it be virtual machine, databases, whatever, they will be able to communicate with each other using a private channel and using private address space. Okay, so that's it on virtual network peering, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.